Afternoon. Um, I had to pop into town today, and after I made my last video and that, and I wanted to clarify something because I had said for all the people out there that hear voices and they're connecting to spirit or source or God or their ancestors or whatever. Don't let anyone tell you that the voices in your head are bad. I need to add a caveat to that because there's three different kinds of voices that the mental health industry confuse, or that society confuse, and they think that if you hear voices in your head you've got a mental illness. But the thing is, the voices in your head are your conscience, and the voices in your head will say to you, don't touch that, it's hot. The voices in your head aren't actual voices. It's intuitive, instinctual behavior that you automatically know to be true. Your thoughts are what the mental health industry will call voices in your head because they're idiots and don't know what they're talking about, because they confuse the schizophrenic type of voices, although I think there's varying degrees of schizophrenia just like there is varying degrees of autism. But I'm going to simplify it for you. So you're born with instincts. Everybody is born with primal instincts, and your primal instincts keep you alive. So if you try to talk down your instincts, you can put yourself in danger. When your instincts kick in, then your intuition takes over, and your intuition is the voice in your head that will tell you, don't get in the car with that person, run now, drop it, put it down, don't go in there, don't be so bloody stupid, you can't rob a bank, like that sort of thing. They're the good voices because they keep you alive and they keep you sane and they keep you balanced. The bad voices are the ones that tell you to hurt other people or to hurt yourself. When you have those kind of voices, when you have the voices that are obsessed with wanting to hurt a particular person and you make those plans, those kind of voices are the bad voices. That's the voice that is crying out for help. You need help. You need to be able to understand why you have those voices and where they've come from. Bearing in mind that narcissism isn't a common diagnosis, that there's not that many people in the world that are actually diagnosed with narcissism. Even though we throw the term around narcissistic abuse, there's not that many people who have been diagnosed, will be diagnosed with narcissism. For the, say, 100 million videos on YouTube that talk about narcissistic abuse, there's only actually about 500,000 people in the world that have actually been diagnosed with it, although many carry the traits of narcissism. But psychopathy, narcissism, being sociopathic, you're taught how to be narcissistic, you're taught how to be sociopathic, but you're born with psychopathy. It's the only thing you're born with. And you're usually diagnosed, you usually exhibit signs of psychopathy from about the age of 3 or 4. And one of the first common signs is hurting animals. My ex-husband used to go to the Edinburgh Zoo with a BB gun and shoot the zebras with their guns, him and his friend Alan, hurting animals, is a big sign of psychopathy. But the voices tell you to do it. If you have voices in your head that are telling you to cause pain and suffering to other people, that's a mental illness that needs to be looked at. A lot of schizophrenia, I think, is misdiagnosed, because a lot of schizophrenia, from what I've observed, have been people who are tuning into the creation frequency, or they're time jumping, like they've stepped into a time slip and they're hearing real events playing out in reality that they can't see but they can hear. But because the mental health industry have no clue what to do with the supernatural, they lump everything in together. So that's the first kind of voice that there's three kind of voices. That's the first one. The ones that tell you to do bad and to be bad. They're usually people who have an underdeveloped or damaged dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It is a kind of brain damage, usually stemming from head injuries or, being smacked about the head, abuse, that sort of thing. But you can be born with it as well. Like if your parents smoked when they were pregnant or drank or did drugs in that, you can have a underdeveloped dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Even if your mother, like me, when I'm pregnant, I'm by the book. I don't drink coffee. I don't go near ducks. I don't go near sheep. I keep away from peanuts. Like I do. I don't touch wool. I'm like by the book. But if the baby daddy drinks or does drugs, or he's infusing that into you, it can cause a child with an underdeveloped dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, because their dad wasn't impregnating you with healthy seed. And then, of course, the rest of it is exhibited in their upbringing. Then the second kind of voice you hear is the voice that tells you you're a bad person, the voices that tell you you're not worthy, the voices that when you look in the mirror, or you won't look in the mirror, that tells you you're ugly, that you're fat, that you're useless, that nobody's going to love you, all that sort of thing. That's the voice, that is your unhealed primal scream. That I call it the primal scream. That is the little child in you that was abused, that like mentally, verbally, physically, that was told they weren't good enough, that were left out, that were treated badly by the parents, by the family, by the people at school, bullied, that sort of thing, and they're replaying the voices in their head. Because they grew up with it, it's natural for them. It's as natural for them as breathing and eating, to look at themselves in the mirror or put themselves down. And I don't care what you say, as a former morbidly obese person, if you're carrying weight, you eat your feelings. You're not confronting the abuse that you suffered at the hands of whoever it was that traumatized you as a kid. And so you eat your feelings, no different to someone who's an alcoholic. You drink to numb the pain. You take the drugs to numb the pain, because you're not looking at the childhood wounds. And so when you put yourself down, you're self-soothing with abuse, because a neglected child, if they're getting abused, it's attention. At least they're getting attention. Negative attention is better than no attention, sort of thing. So they don't know any better. So when they grow up, when they become, independent of mind and body and that, they self-soothe by bullying themselves. I call it self-bullying, because when you're away from your bullies and you've got no one to bully you, but you've only known being bullied, being judged, being picked on, being criticised, pulled apart, picked apart by the way for the way you look, for the way you act, the way you carry yourself, whatever. When you're away from that, even if it's just in another room, when you're in that silence, the silence and being by yourself, forces you to think in order to keep yourself company. And it's why you will often, well, not often, it's why you end up in codependent relationships where you stick around even though you're miserable, even though they're abusing you and neglecting you, abandoning you, that sort of thing. Because, as I keep saying, when you're little, when you're in your mother's tummy and that, when you get out, you look for what was comfortable to you in the surroundings of your mother's womb. So if your mother was around toxic behaviour, whether it was from baby daddy or, siblings or whatever, it becomes vibrational. The baby absorbs her energy and her thoughts and her feelings and her laughter and her sadness and her fear and her whatever, and the baby intuitively knows that the frequency that is giving that mother that reaction is natural, normal behaviour. So then you look for it when you're out of the womb, because it's what you know, it's your nest. When you're in your mother's womb, the people she's around and the thoughts and feelings she has becomes your nest. So you look for it in all your relationships, people who will abuse you, people who will backstab you, people who will criticise you, people who will judge you, blah, 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 because it's all you know. So then when you have 5 minutes to yourself, the bad thoughts come in. Then the anxiety will come in. Then you get depressed. And you go through that cycle, and it's all because you're self-soothing with negative thoughts, because sitting quietly in the recesses of your own mind, when you're not around a lot of people, when you're not around people, that quiet, it's supposed to be your safe space, but because you've never grown up with the right kind of positive, nurturing voices and that, you have to fill that quiet space with the only thing you know, which is negative talk, self-bullying. So the second voice is the voice that you hear that is mean to you, because it's all you've known. Why do I keep having these men that are like this to me? Because it's what your fathers, your brothers, your uncles, your cousins, whoever, is because that's what they were like. My dad wasn't abusive. But he was away with the army a lot, and he did cheat on my mum. He wasn't the best husband with my mum until after, their marriage had hit a rough patch, and then they sorted everything out, and then they fell in love like teenagers again. But my mum went through a lot with my dad, but then at the same time, my mum was also, her father was exceptionally physically abusive. And even though I wasn't with men who were physically abusive, I was with men who abused me mentally, emotionally, verbally, that sort of thing. But it's because I was also around people who treated me like that as well. So growing up, it was all I knew: the judgment, the criticism, the gossiping, the bullying, the social criticism, and having to deal with all the cliques in my own family and in my school and all that sort of thing. So I was only ever around people that were like that, or that were like that eventually. So I ate my feelings. Food was a comfort for me. It made me feel better. It didn't judge me. Same with animals, like, being around animals in nature. They don't judge you. So the voices in your head that, when you look in the mirror or when you have that quiet time, you always find as well people who are the most damaged psychologically will have a ton of friends, because they can't stand isolation. They can't stand being by themselves, because the second they have any kind of peace and quiet, they start thinking. and they'll start thinking about things that happened when they were kids, or, you know, the breakup, or the ex that did this and the blah, blah, blah. And so they have to fill that space with a lot of people, keep themselves busy, jump from one relationship to another, because they don't want to be by themselves. But when you're going through an ascension, isolation is absolutely essential, because the only way that you're going to sort everything out is by decompartmentalizing everything and putting everything away in files that says, well, that's because that happened when I was a child, and that's because I allowed that to happen, and that's because I made this mistake, and, you know, that sort of thing. But people don't want to work on themselves. They don't want to have to face it, so they'd rather sit in the torment than rip the Band-Aid off. You know, having a cigarette, doing a line or something, having a drink or whatever, sleeping around. It's a short-term solution, a short-term rush of dopamine and serotonin in order to mask something that needs to be looked at, that needs melatonin, really. Help you sleep better, calm your anxiety down, sort out your circadian rhythm, strengthens your pineal gland. Your pineal gland is all responsible for that sort of thing. And when you have an underactive pineal gland, you can't connect to source, which is the number one voice in your head, the voice of God, the one that tells you you're a good person and I need you to help me fix other people. You are a kind person. I need you to take in that stray rabbit. I need you to put food out for the animals. I need you to take food to the lady who's broken her leg, like that sort of thing. The voices in your head that say, I need you to fix the negative energy in that building. I need you to go to that person and say you're not a bad person. You just need to deal with your wounded inner child. The number one voice in your head is the voice of your conscience, and that's where God resides. And you should never ever not listen to that voice, because that's the voice that not only keeps you alive, because that's the voice that aligns your intuition with your instincts. It keeps you alive. You know, like, I watch all these videos, these people that just intuitively knew, be there at that time, and then something major happened, and then they were able to save people. You know, we see these videos on YouTube all the time where people are walking past, and then they just happen to look up out of nowhere, and a baby or animal drops out of the sky, and they're able to catch them. Or, you know, they turn around just at the right time to catch the kid that's just about to get hit by the bus. That's the voice of God. And these doctors and that are trying to put all of that in together, and they don't know what they're doing. And when you shut down that voice, it will lead to danger and death. Never ever not listen to the voice that tells you to be somewhere, do something. You know, if the voice in your head saves a life, saves your life, gives you a good feeling, makes you happy, makes you emotional, if it makes you want to be a good person, and you know that you're a good person and you're not hurting anyone, and you have no interest in hurting anyone, and you're not doing anything to hurt anyone or take away from anyone or anything like that, and that voice in your head is telling you to be a good person, then nobody has the right to tell you that that voice in your head is wrong. Because what they're telling you is your connection to God is wrong. And, well, I mean, that's actually against the law in the United Kingdom. That voice in your head that tells you, buy a gift for that person, take some flowers to that person, cook a cake, bake a cake for that person, for no other good reason than just bake a cake and take it to the neighbour. That's the voice of God. How is that a mental illness? So there are three kind of voices, and one of them is beautiful, and one of them is just the wounded inner child in you that needs a hug and a cuddle and needs to be around someone that where they can have a good cry and get it all out of their system and then begin to heal. And then the other one is the cry for help. And it's the only the one that's a cry for help is the only voice in the head that any doctor should be dealing with. But even then, they need to recategorize what some of those voices are, because not all people who hear voices, like with schizophrenia and that, are dealing with anything negative or bad. They might be, from the videos that I've watched, they're usually musicians or artists and programmers. Not so much writers, because the writers, when you're a writer, you're going to have the voices in your head anyway, because you're developing characters, and your characters, you give birth to them. And so they'll have personalities, and when you have backstories and all of that, but it usually seems to be musicians, artists, and anyone who works with computers will be diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I've watched so many videos where the thing that has been triggering them when they've been hearing the voices, it's always when they're working or when they're constructing something that they're going to work on in their head. Then they'll hear the voices and they don't realise it's because they're tapping into the creation frequency. And when you tap into the creation frequency, you're tapping into the supernatural. And when you're tapping into the supernatural, you'll have time bends and time slips. You think you're hearing ghosts, the ghosts of the past, the voices of the past. And it'll be 100% real. They really will be hearing those voices. They just don't see them because they're not in the same, their timelines aren't aligned. And as an occult physicist, this is what I had to figure out and watching people and studying people. Because when I had my blog, I had hundreds upon hundreds of people coming to me with depression, who were suicidal. Like I've said before, I stopped 2 murder-suicides and a potential mass murder. I've got videos up about it. The guy that came to me who had a kill list, he had the voices in his head that were telling him to do these things and do these things and blah, 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 blah. And I talked him out of it. You can't lump it all, you can't put it all in the same bowl and call it schizophrenia or dissociative disorder or disassociation or anything like that. There's branches to it where some are in the realms of the paranormal, which is where the psychological and societal realms of the subconscious mind, and then you have the supernatural, which is the physics and the faith side of the subconscious realms. And they're two completely different things, and they're varying levels from, the lowest ones to, like your psychopathy and your serial killers and the people that join cults and do sacrifices and all that sort of thing, right up to people like me and the supernatural, where I'm God's messenger. So if you hear voices, if the voices in your head are, well, hang on, let me rephrase that. Now that you know that there are 3 kinds of voices, you can know which category you're in. And if you have the voices that tell you to do bad things and hurtful things and hurt yourself and hurt other people and stuff like that, then yes, of course you need help. But if you're one of the other 2, if you're the second voice, then you need healing. Whereas the first one, they need help. The second one needs healing. And the first one, you don't have to do a thing, because it means that you've gone through an ascension process where, what did God say? What did Jesus say? The true messengers of God aren't the ones who shout and proclaim. They're the ones who are patient or broken. And that's because, and I was told this and it really pissed me off when I was locked up. They've actually given it a diagnosis. There's some kind of mental illness diagnosis thing. Was it God psychosis or something like that, where, people when they're locked up, they find God. And it's like, that's when you're supposed to find God. And that's exactly what Jesus was talking about. The only true believers, the only true messengers of God are the ones who are patient or broken. And because the thing is, you meet Jesus in the trenches. When you're going through hell, when you're going through your war, when you're going through your personal war, when you're going through your deepest, darkest moments of despair, that's when you find Jesus. Because if you found him any other time, you take that connection with him for granted. But when you turn around, when you think all hope is lost, and you turn around and you find he's the one standing there saying, I'm in this with you, I'm going to help you get out of this. That's when you find Jesus. You find him in the trenches. You find him when you need him the most. And that's what he said. The patient or the broken. And when you're locked up in a place where I was, you're never more broken. Especially when, unlike the other women in there who had friends and family and that to rely on, I had no one. I had to do it myself, other than BJ, my blonde angel. And she's the one that took me to Jesus. She introduced me. She was the one that made me realise he was right there. And I haven't let go of him since. I was starting to believe in God before I got locked up, but it's because I believed in God that they decided to lock me up, because they did not understand my physics. But I was not going to lie to stroke their egos and let them think that because they had medical degrees, they knew my physics and the supernatural sciences better than I did. So the way they treated me just made me more determined to prove that I was right. Because Scorpio rat. Don't ever tell a Scorpio they're something they know they're not. Because we'll go to war to prove that we're right. Because when it comes to our reputations, when it comes to, everything that we hold dear to us in regards to the way we're perceived, like, I don't give a shit what people think, but I'm not going to have people walk around saying that I'm a whore, or that I'm a liar, or that I put my kids in any kind of danger or anything like that, because that's not true. To just sit back and not fight those things is letting people think that I'm like that. And I want to work with children, which is why they went after me as a wife and as a woman, and a mother, because they wanted to tarnish my reputation, to make it look like I couldn't be trusted with children, so that nobody would give me visas, no one would want to invest, because then if I'm saving children, they can't hurt the children. So I'm like, well, you got another bloody thing coming then. And it was through God saying, lock the doors, block them on the phone, and do everything I say. And when you come out the other side, I promise you're not going to regret it. It kept listening to that voice, kept me alive. And when they were trying to kill me in that hospital with the starvation and the torture and the poisoning and that, it was Jesus and reading my Bible and deciphering the codes and sitting with God, and that kept me alive. Because I was probably maybe about 2 weeks away from dying in my sleep. My heart was just going to give out. BJ and I used to talk for hours because I was too scared to go to sleep. I used to cry on the phone, say to her, I'm too scared to go to sleep, because I'm scared if I go to sleep I won't wake up, because I was getting weaker. It was getting to the point where I used to, when I had to go for all their bullshit nonsense and all of that, or, to see if I was lucky enough that day to get food, I couldn't hold myself up anymore. I was so weak and riddled with infection that I would have to drag myself along the wall just to keep myself up. But I was determined not to drop in front of them. I was not going to give them that satisfaction of being like the others that they dealt with by just putting them on a drip and knocking them out. Because I knew if it got that to that point, I wasn't going to come out of it. I was too weak. But God and Jesus were there, and they gave me the strength to fight, and my God, did I fight. So don't let anyone tell you, because I was in there with, what was her name? Ruth, was it? She was diagnosed with, they tried to say she was nuts, but she used to call me Cosmic. She, her nickname for me was Cosmic, but what was her username? Was it, I want to say Rainbow Unicorn, but I'm probably completely wrong. She was the same as me. She was going through an ascension, didn't have a clue what the hell was going on, and they battered her with all sorts of medication and told her she was nuts and all that sort of thing because of the voices and that, and she went along with it. But she got it. She knew who I was, and I knew exactly who she was, and they did everything in their power to keep us apart. They told her, you're going down two different paths. She brought in a whole pile of body gel and shower gel and all that, because she knew I hadn't had a fresh change of clothes in 2 weeks. I was literally wearing the same bra, knickers, top and pants for 2 weeks. And what I'd have to do is wash them in the shower and then dry them on the radiator and just sit wrapped in a blanket or a towel until the clothes dried. Luckily it was summer, so it wasn't that bad. And then sometimes my top was big enough that I could wear it as a dress if my pants weren't dry, but there were times where I'd have to go and get food with no bra on, no underwear, absolute stripped of my dignity. And she came in one day with a whole thing of shower gels and lotions and that, so that I could have a shower and at least smell nice. It was just, oh my God, I've never been so happy to see. It was watermelon. Her friend makes watermelon shower gel stuff. It was like a foam, like a mousse thing in a jar. And I felt feminine it was just the most exceptional feeling. And then there was Rachel, who every morning would get up and do everyone's hair. And every time I got stuff that I couldn't have because of allergies and that sort of thing, when BJ would send me things that I couldn't have or that, I was allergic to and that, I'd give them to her as a gift. She couldn't believe I was giving her all this stuff. Why are you giving it to me? I said, because God told me to. And she's like, why? And I said, because you're providing a service for these women and making them feel good. She couldn't believe it. She said, nobody's ever given me a gift before. Broke my heart. I thought, oh my God. And I was only giving you things like lemonade and crackers and, cookies and things like that, because obviously with my allergies and all of that, there was toothpaste and, because I don't have fluoride and that. But God bless BJ, she wasn't to know. But I took them in my little washing basket and took them down to her, and she couldn't believe it. It was like I said, I've got a gift basket, and the basket was full too. She was staring in disbelief. And I thought, how sad that nobody's ever just randomly given her a gift before. Just taking a random gift to someone to let them know that you care, it makes a whole world of difference. She was gang stalked. They didn't believe her either. But hopefully if she's ever out there and she's looking at my stuff now, I've provided enough legal evidence that she can use the stuff that I did during my investigation to back up her claims now as well. So she's the one that told me that what my ex had done was historical sexual abuse. She's the one that contacted the police for me to help me file my report with the police about the historical sexual abuse. I didn't even know that that was a thing. I didn't even know what he was doing to me was sexual abuse. I thought he was just being a creepy perv. So, yeah, so I gave her gifts, and I kept giving her gifts. So, don't let anyone tell you that the voices in your head that are bringing comfort to people, whether it's giving advice, giving them a gift, just acting on impulse to do something good for someone, that's making you feel good, that's making you feel closer to your loved ones on the other side, to God, your ancestors, source, atom, the universe, whoever you believe in. Because when you shut that voice down, it shuts your intuition and your instinct down, and you need those to keep you alive. It's that is the voice in your head that is your survival mechanism, triggers your survival mechanism. And believe it or not, being in a society around a group of people where you can do good things for them is part of survival. Blending in, not making waves, keeping the peace, that is all part of the dynamic of societal survival. Survival dynamics. So don't ever let anyone tell you that that voice is wrong. Then the second voice is the one that where that kid needs a cuddle, and you need to be told it wasn't your fault. It's not your fault that you weren't loved the way you deserve to be loved, and it's not your fault that you were the emotional punching bag for all the unhealed people in your life. So find someone to have a cuddle and a cry with, and then do things to help heal that wounded inner child, and let that wounded inner child know that they are tough and they are brave and they are pretty and they are strong and they are smart and they are kind and they are all good, wonderful, lovable things. And turn that now into music and art and dance and performance and whatever. And then the other voice is, the one that hurts you, you need to look for help. When I get my radio show, I ideally want to do talk back where people can actually call in, where we can talk voice to voice, and then they can have a cry, or they can, not lash out, but, they can get a bit mad, and they can, ask questions and ask why and all of that, and then I'll be able to help them. So I just had to explain it, because the mental health industry don't understand what the hell they're talking about, but I kind of feel like I didn't explain it enough, that I was kind of concerned that for the people that have the bad voices, I might have been saying to them, it's okay to have those voices. I didn't put the caveat in the last video, so I'm doing it now. So, yeah. So there are 3 kinds of voices, and now you know what to do with them if you have any of them. But we all have the third one. We all have the voice of our conscience. We all have that. It's that voice, it's the third voice, the voice of God, the voice of conscience, that gives you things like guilt and hesitation. And, my sister, if ever you have second thoughts about something, you're being told it's not right. So, because you could be making a mistake, you're being told, are you sure about this? Have another think. Is it Is it right to be doing it now? Have you got all your ducks in a row, like that sort of thing? But yeah, the third voice is the voice that pulls you up when you've made a mistake with guilt, or reassures you if you're nervous, like if you're about to make a presentation or whatever and you're a bit nervous. You can do this, come on, you're going to be great. They're not bad voices. We all have them, even those doctors that sit there and diagnose us with nonsense. We all have the number 3 voice. We all have that voice. And they'd be lying if they say they don't think to themselves. So I just had to put it out there because I didn't want to be... I hold myself liable for anything because I don't want people to misinterpret anything I'm saying if I haven't explained it properly. So now you know. So I'm going to go now, and I will speak to you later. Ka kite anō. Mwah.